Mom and sister tried to convince me to get back with my ex, but I accidentally got pregnant by his best friend. It all started when I began dating my brother's best friend at 16. We were together until I graduated high school, and that's when he proposed. I turned him down, and chaos broke out with my family. They begged me to reconsider, saying we could have a long engagement or make some sort of promise to reconcile. My brother, who's 36 now, took it pretty hard, but it was my relationship with my sister, she's 32, that really took a nosedive. She was convinced that my ex was the perfect guy for me, and when she started dating his brother, things got unbearable. My ex became a regular fixture at every family event, courtesy of my siblings, even showing up to some of our holidays. I kept my mouth shut because, well, he was their friend too. But when my sister began pushing for us to get back together, things took a turn. She went so far as to set us up on blind dates and even tried to make us share a room during family gatherings. No matter the occasion, he was always there. Eventually, I'd had enough and asked my parents to step in. They laid down the law, and while my brother eased off, my sister didn't. Things came to a head when I met my now husband during a semester abroad. He went to another university, but we just clicked instantly like magic. After dating for a year, we got engaged, and while my family was thrilled, my sister wasn't. She kept saying I was just in the honeymoon phase and would snap out of it. Spoiler alert, I didn't. After endless arguments and failed attempts to reunite me with my ex, I finally told my sister that if she didn't stop, I would cut her off completely. What does she do? She goes behind my back, makes me the maid of honor at her wedding, and decides to pair my husband with one of her friends, basically assigning him a date. We didn't even realize what was happening until we got to the reception, and her friend made a pass at my husband. My sister's excuse? Since we weren't married yet, it was okay to explore. That was the final straw. I left the reception and the next day sat down with my parents and brother, laying it all out. I told them I wasn't going to force anyone to pick sides, but I was done with my sister, and if they tried to fix things between us, I'd cut contact with them too. My mom was heartbroken and tried to negotiate, but my dad and brother respected my choice. Aside from a couple of attempts from my mom, I haven't spoken a word to my sister in 6 years. She's tried everything, from sending gifts to throwing tantrums, but I refuse to engage. When we're at family events, I just act like she's not even there. As far as I'm concerned, my sister doesn't exist. In the beginning, she'd make snide comments or try to stir up drama, but since no one took her side, she eventually gave up. However, she did have a full-blown meltdown when she found out she was invited to my wedding but wasn't going to be part of the planning. My brother admitted he feels guilty for going along with her nonsense for so long, and it strained his relationship with my ex. They still talk, but they're not nearly as close anymore. Now, here's the kicker. A couple of weeks ago, we celebrated my mom's birthday, and I decided to announce that we're expecting our first child, a baby girl. It's not the first grandchild in the family, but it is the first granddaughter, so everyone was thrilled. Everyone except my sister, of course. My mom noticed her reaction and invited me over for tea a few days later. I had a gut feeling something was off, but I tried to stay positive. When I pulled up to my parents' house, the first red flag was seeing my sister's car parked outside. Sure enough, when I walked in, there she was with her husband, my ex, and even his mom. They'd all gathered for what they called an intervention, claiming my childish behavior had gone on long enough. My ex started in, saying he was only ever trying to be romantic, but he gets that I didn't appreciate it. His mom chimed in, insisting that my sister was just looking out for me, and since she had already apologized, it was time for me to forgive and move on. I was just sitting there, texting my dad, brother, and husband, feeling completely blindsided. Then my brother-in-law had the audacity to tell me I was being hurtful and needed to start acting like an adult now that I'm about to have a baby. My mom followed that up by reading a letter she'd written, going on about how heartbroken she was that her daughters weren't close, acknowledging that my sister was wrong, but saying it all came from a good place. Then, my sister read her letter, crying and basically repeating the same nonsense. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, in total disbelief, until my brother showed up. He stormed in, angrier than I've ever seen him, grabbed my things, and told everyone how disappointed and disgusted he was. We left and sat in his car until my dad and husband arrived. By that point, I was a wreck, just sitting there sobbing, and my brother kept apologizing over and over. I'm not entirely sure what went down after we left, but I sent everyone involved, except my mom, an email with my lawyer's contact information attached, stating that I don't want to be contacted ever again. And if they do reach out, I'll involve the police. So far, no one's reached out, but my dad told me my mom and sister are hysterical. They're apparently hoping to mend things and for my sister to somehow be part of my baby's life, even floating the idea of her being the godmother. My dad's staying with my brother for the time being, and they both fully support me, but there are other relatives who don't. I've even had some mutual friends call, saying they're worried about my sister. Lately, I've had mutual friends reaching out, asking what's going on since my sister is now spreading the story that my husband is keeping me away from the family. I hate putting my personal life on blast, but I reached a breaking point and decided to lay it all out in a long Facebook post. I explained everything that's been happening, and now my sister, brother-in-law, and ex are getting dragged through the mud. That wasn't exactly my intention, but honestly, they deserve it. Now, my mom's been a wreck, crying nonstop, which does make me feel a little bad. But nowhere near as bad as that intervention made me feel. A couple of days ago, I agreed to sit down with her and laid out some ground rules for any possible future relationship. I told her we'd need family therapy, clear boundaries, no passing info about me to my sister, and separate holidays. The biggest thing? If she pulls anything like this again, she'll be cut off for good. She thinks all of this is a bit much but said she's willing to go along with it. I could tell she thought this meant everything was instantly fixed, and she'd have immediate access to baby news, but I had to explain that this is a process. She has to prove she's changed before anything can move forward. My dad and brother, on the other hand, refused to speak to my sister, and they've apologized repeatedly for not stepping in sooner. I've forgiven them since they've genuinely grown and moved on from all of this. My husband, bless him, supports whatever decision I make, but my mother-in-law is torn. She's not sure that cutting off my mom's access to her granddaughter is the right move, though she says it's ultimately my decision. I'm stuck between feeling torn and unsure about what to do next when it comes to my mom. Some of the comments on my post have been wild. One person even said, "Now that you're pregnant, you should stop playing house with your husband and realize your happy ever after is with your ex." Like, seriously? And then there's the whole thing about the baby. Someone had the nerve to ask if my ex and his family would even accept her. It's unbelievable. My sister, on the other hand, swears she's not trying to get me and my ex back together anymore. But she's insisting that I can't take away her chance to be an aunt. She went so far as to call me a bad sister for being close with my sisters-in-law, who are honestly amazing people. Needless to say, I don't believe her for a second. As for my mom, someone commented, "She couldn't be your best friend without you dating your ex?" And honestly, I wish I could tell you what her logic is, but I have no idea. My husband thinks she's just mentally unwell. The most bizarre and terrifying part of all of this is that my ex still has the mixtapes and CDs I made him when we were dating. Those things are about 20 years old, and he's still holding on to them. It's unsettling, to say the least. One commenter even called my ex a stalker, and to be honest, I can't argue with that. They also told me to hold firm with my mom and not set any timelines for her. She needs to prove she can stick to the rules I've set. And as for my sister, well, she's just going to have to live with the consequences of her actions. To be fair, my brother did start distancing himself from my ex when I told our parents how uncomfortable I was with everything. Back when I was in college, I was living away but would come home during breaks, and my ex was always around. It was uncomfortable, to say the least. He even made a big effort to make my husband feel welcome, which only worsened things between him and my brother. My ex felt betrayed because my brother grew closer to my husband, and now they're best friends. These days, my brother only talks to my ex if it's about our nephew or just to be polite. One commenter pointed out something that really hit me. They said my mom is part of the reason my sister keeps pushing all of this. My sister knows my mom quietly supports it, which is why she doesn't stop. That realization made me incredibly sad because my mom has always been so kind to my husband, and now I'm questioning their entire relationship. For some background, my family isn't religious and we're not Indian like some have guessed. My parents were generally good and supportive. They thought my ex's lingering feelings were just a romantic gesture at first, but eventually, they realized it was more than that. My dad has always had my back, but now I'm starting to think my mom just went along with it and might actually share the same views as my sister. My sister always had this fantasy of us being best friends, both married to brothers, and living out some dream life together. Update 1. Same day, 16 hours later. I wanted to post this update earlier but couldn't. First, I want to thank everyone for the support and advice. It's been overwhelming, and I truly appreciate it. I also wanted to share more details since I can't respond to every comment individually. My ex and I broke up when I was 18. He's 37 now. The main reason we split was because I didn't want to get married or engaged at that time, and my sister's obsession with us getting back together stems from her dream of us both being married to brothers and staying close forever. What makes this even harder is realizing my mom's kindness toward my husband might have been fake all along. It's heartbreaking to think about. As for my ex, he's dated other people since we broke up and even has 2 kids with one of his exes, but he's never remarried. My sister keeps calling this a romantic gesture, saying that he's only ever wanted to marry me. That's where things get a little creepier. His obsessive behavior isn't just with me. From what I've heard through the grapevine, he was the same way with his children's mother. But now he's refocusing his attention on me because my sister is pushing him to help her get back in my good graces. It's unsettling, to say the least. My brother did start cutting him off when I opened up to my parents about how uncomfortable I felt with my ex constantly being around. Even though I wasn't living at home during college, I'd visit during breaks, and there he'd be, acting like nothing had changed. My brother's loyalty shifted after that, and now my husband is one of his closest friends. He only talks to my ex when it's absolutely necessary, like discussing our nephew, or just to avoid being rude. When my brother talks to my ex, it's only about my nephew, or simply to avoid being rude. My parents seem to support my decision to distance myself from my ex, but I'm realizing now that it was really just my dad who agreed with me. On the day of that disastrous tea party, my mom told my dad she was making my favorite tea and sweets, and that he couldn't stay because she wanted to have some quality time with me. My dad didn't think anything of it and went to hang out with my uncle, thinking it was a sweet gesture. Now he's furious. As for my husband, he made a genuine effort with my sister when they first met, but now he just ignores her. He's convinced she might have some mental health issues, but even if that's true, it doesn't excuse how she's been acting. Apparently, they invited my ex and his mom to the tea party because they thought it would somehow help me confront the root of my issues with my sister. At least that's their official story. Just to clarify, we're not Indian or particularly religious, and there's no huge wealth disparity between my husband and my ex. If anything, my husband is probably better off financially. Lastly, my sisters-in-law, both my brother's wife and my husband's sisters, are furious about everything that's been happening. My husband and his sisters are planning to have a talk with their mom about a comment she made, while my brother and his wife are seriously considering going no contact with my mom. In the meantime, they've decided she won't be seeing my nephews for a while. The more I think about it, the more I'm starting to believe that I might have to cut contact with my mom too, for the sake of my child. My husband is heartbroken, realizing that all the interactions he thought were genuine might have been fake. He's even angrier about how my mom made me question myself, made me feel like I wasn't a good person. I know there are still a lot of difficult conversations to have with my family, especially regarding my mom, but one thing is clear. I'm definitely pursuing a restraining order against my sister and my ex. Update on the current state of my family. I had another conversation with my mom, but she's still insisting that she knows what's best for me. She even had the nerve to say I'm a bad person and that she'll be seeking grandparents' rights or even custody of my child. I know none of this is true, but hearing it from her still caused me to panic. We ended up sending her a formal letter addressing the situation. As for my dad, he's officially moved out. He told my mom he couldn't stand by while she terrorized their own child. My brother and his wife have also decided to cut contact with her. I know all of this might seem sudden, but I can't even begin to describe the level of despair I felt after that so-called intervention. My husband told my family afterward that they needed to seriously reflect on what they value and how they treat people. He made it very clear that we would not be raising our child in a toxic environment. Reason #3, 271, 637 Why I love this man. My husband is devastated by my mom's behavior. He's hurt, angry, and says she'll never get anything from him ever again. That's about as far as his desire for revenge goes, though. He and his sisters talked to my mother-in-law about her earlier comment, and they helped her understand why it was so out of line. Thankfully, she seems to get it now. As many of you assume, my mom always came across as a very loving person from a supportive family, which makes this whole situation even harder to process. My dad and brother keep apologizing for any part they played in it. My dad is in disbelief that it's reached this point. He keeps saying it all feels surreal. Regardless, they've made it clear they'll stand by me no matter what, and are ready to help me fight whatever ridiculous battle my mom or my sister tries to start. Update 2. December 17, 2021. First off, I want to thank everyone for the kind messages and support. I decided to repost here since the original post was deleted. Things are a strange mix of great and horrible, but I'm trying to stay positive through it all. My brother and his wife recently sat my nephews down to explain what's been going on. They told them that Grandma was sick and had tried to hurt Annie Diamond, that's what they call me, and their little cousin. They explained that she wouldn't be part of their lives anymore, but that doesn't mean she doesn't love them. It was tough, but the kids are really smart. They also let them know that their other aunt, my sister, wasn't going to be in their lives anymore either. Thankfully, they didn't seem to care much, not because of me, but because they never really liked her. She wasn't exactly great with them either. When my mom found out about all this, she completely lost it. She started making wild claims about her rights and how she would make sure she got to see her grandchildren. Meanwhile, my dad's been looking for a permanent place to live, but he's staying with us until January, mainly because my brother's mother-in-law is visiting and we have more space. It's been incredibly hard for him. He's heartbroken, but he's already contacted divorce lawyers, moved bank accounts, and started the process of separating everything. My mom has been bombarding him with emails, texts, and calls, but he's not responding to any of it. His lawyer advised him not to block her just yet. He even considered forgiving her at one point, but things took a turn for the worse after my last post. A couple of days ago, I had a huge spike in my blood pressure because my mom and sister decided to show up at my house unannounced. My sister had never been to my home before, and my mom knew full well that I didn't want her there, but I guess that didn't matter anymore. The cleaning lady, who wasn't aware of the situation, let them in because she knows my mom. I hadn't had a chance to tell her they were no longer welcome. I had just gotten home from running some errands when I saw their car parked outside. This time, I didn't even bother going inside. I immediately called my relatives, and luckily, my sister-in-law's husband's sister was nearby. She showed up, confronted them, and told them they needed to leave or I'd call the police for trespassing. They left, but the whole thing left me feeling awful. We ended up going to the doctor, and I was told that all the stress and excitement wasn't good for the baby. They told me I needed to relax, or it could start affecting the pregnancy. After that, my dad, along with my brother, uncle, and husband, went to the house and took everything my dad could think of. My husband said my sister was there, screaming at him, saying he had destroyed her family. It was a mess, but my dad told her enough was enough. After everything that happened, my husband is furious. He told me he believes my mom and sister almost killed our baby with all the stress they put me through, and he doesn't want to have any contact with them ever again. My sister has been bombarding my brother with messages, begging for help, but he's done too. It breaks my heart, especially for my nephew, because he's losing so much of his family just because his mom has these crazy ideas. But it is what it is. As for the threats about custody and grandparents' rights that my mom keeps throwing around, my lawyer sent her a formal letter. It made it clear that she had caused harm to both my health and the baby, and if she continues harassing me, we'll take legal action. My brother sent her a similar letter about her constant harassment. Both my mom and sister have refused to go to therapy. While they might be dealing with some mental health issues, it's clear they've been on the same page about this mess for a long time. For now, I'm focusing on spending the holidays with my family, staying healthy, and going to therapy. Update 3, March 30th, 2022. Hi, everyone. I've received several requests for an update and finally found a little time, so here it is. First, I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your kind comments, messages, and advice. Honestly, we owe you for making us even more cautious than we had been. Some of you asked how we found out the baby's gender. We announced it after 20 weeks. The reason we waited so long was because we had experienced a loss in the past. We were preparing to announce that pregnancy when the miscarriage happened, so this time we wanted to be extra sure before sharing the news. We also naively thought it would be a special moment for my mom. Yeah, lesson learned. After reading your comments, I handed everything over to my husband, and he spent days going through your advice. We decided to thoroughly check the house, and while we didn't find anything suspicious, we still felt unsafe. So we packed up and went to stay in a hotel with my dad. That's when we realized something truly disturbing. There was a tracker hidden on my dog's vest. He's a small dog who gets cold easily, so he always wears this cute little vest. It never even crossed my mind to check it, but we found the tracker after my dad took him for a walk around the hotel. My sister showed up shortly after, asking about me and talking about reconciliation. I was furious. That was the final straw, and we decided to move. Thankfully, we're in a position where we could afford to relocate. We're currently renting a new place and also renting out our old home so it's not sitting there empty. I used to love that house, but now it feels ruined, tainted by everything that happened. Sadly, my parents' house feels the same way, not just for me, but for all of us. My brother, husband, dad, and even my husband's family have all changed their phone numbers, gotten new electronics, and notified our employers, friends, and the police about the situation. We also started therapy both individually and as a family. My dad and brother still carry a lot of guilt over everything, even though I've truly forgiven them. But we're healing together as a unit. My mom and sister are still insisting they've done nothing wrong and don't need therapy. My dad, on the other hand, is completely done with my sister. He even made a new will, setting up a trust fund for my nephew and giving him some inheritance, but my sister, she's only getting a token amount. At first, I felt bad for her, but I've decided to focus all my energy on my baby instead. She's finally here, and we're so blessed. It's not exactly how I imagined things would be since my mom isn't around, but so many friends and family members have truly stepped up and surprised us with their love and support. By the end of it all, we were so paranoid that we started testing certain people. We told them I was going into labor, just to see who would run and tell my mom or sister. It worked like a charm. We figured out who was still feeding them information and cut those people out of our lives. The rest of our friends understood when we explained why we had to do it. As for my ex, who my friends now call Bates, he went around telling people the baby was his, claiming we had been having an affair because of my supposed undying love for him. Thankfully, no one believes him anymore, but it was so ridiculous that my husband contacted Bates' employer to let them know about all the craziness. Long story short, Bates was suspended pending an internal investigation. I'm almost certain he's going to be fired. His company keeps asking us for more details, and they seem really apologetic about the whole situation. Meanwhile, my mom has been trying to track us down, but everyone who knows where we are has gone no contact with her. My dad's lawyer sent her a letter stating that, due to her instability, all future correspondence would have to go through lawyers. It's just been us and my dad lately, and I feel bad for him being on his own. He keeps telling me he's fine and that none of this is my fault, but I still feel awful. That said, he's been the best babysitter, feeder, and diaper changer in the world. My nephews are as sweet as ever, and my dad even got to spend some time with my sister's son. That visit happened because my sister kept making videos, threatening to hurt herself unless my husband stopped alienating her from the family. My dad reached out, offering to see her son, and told her that if she didn't stop with the threats, he'd call the police. Thankfully, that seemed to put an end to it, for now at least. Some people have suggested that maybe I gave Bates false hope, but that couldn't be further from the truth. For years, I was uncomfortable, hoping he would eventually move on. After I finally spoke up and met my husband, I spent so much time battling my sister over it. I had a very long engagement, and that's why I got married after my sister. I still love my mom and sister, but at the end of the day, I'm choosing a healthy life for myself and my family over that love. Through this whole ordeal, I've discovered so much loyalty, love, and compassion from people I didn't expect it from. As strange as it sounds, I actually feel lucky that everything exploded the way it did. It's been eye-opening. Hopefully, this isn't too much of a ramble. Sending big hugs from me. Update 4, June 25, 2022. We officially moved into our new house, and my dad has moved into the guest house. We've had many discussions about the future, but for now, things feel stable and peaceful. In and out of therapy, we've had a lot of conversations, and as much as we love having my dad around, we all agreed that while it's great for him to be with us, we still need our own space. For now, we're renting out the old place and we'll decide what to do with it later. My dad gets all the grandkids together about 3 times a week now, which has been really great for everyone. However, he still has to see my sister's son separately because she won't let him take her kid unless she knows where he's living. Under normal circumstances, that would make sense, but considering how unstable she is, we want to keep her far away. My mom has been complaining to the lawyers about how unfair it is that my dad still gets to see the grandkids, but there's really nothing she can do about it. About a month ago, my dad dropped a bit of a bombshell. He confessed that he's been paying for my nephews, my sister's sons, schooling and babysitting, which is why she still allows him to see the kid. He felt so guilty for keeping it a secret and didn't want to hide anything from me. I assured him he'd done nothing wrong and told him not to feel bad about it. Then, on Mother's Day, my dad got an email with a link to an Instagram video. It was a sad, melodramatic post about how most of the family had abandoned my mom, and my sister was portrayed as some kind of saint for standing by her side. The whole thing was pathetic and infuriating, but instead of getting worked up, I just forwarded it to the lawyer. My dad officially filed for divorce in May, and it's still ongoing. My mom keeps insisting he's in the wrong, but my dad told me he'd rather drink bleach than go back to her. So I think it's safe to say he's done for good. For Father's Day, my brother and husband took him out, and they had an absolute blast. My sister posted a ton of stuff that day, but we managed to block my dad from seeing any of it because we wanted him to enjoy his day without the drama. They also did this fun little camping trip with the kids, which really meant they went to a hotel, booked a suite, and set up a tent in the middle of the room for the kids, complete with a tiny teepee for the baby. Honestly, having our little one has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And watching my husband be the amazing father I always knew he would be just makes my heart so full. It's tiring, but with so much support around us, I feel incredibly grateful. I'm especially thankful for my sisters-in-law. We've even set up a little calendar to organize activities for the kids, making sure everything is age-appropriate. We also make it clear to the kids that they don't have to hang out with anyone they don't like, and that their voices matter. Right now, all the kids are obsessed with the baby and keep calling themselves her protectors. We have these sweet little get-togethers, brunches, family hangouts, and honestly, family time is a pleasure now that my sister isn't around. I know it might sound harsh, but she just has a way of sucking all the positivity out of a room. My mother-in-law also loves spending time with the baby and stays over in the guest room about once a week. It's been such a positive change. Every week, my mother-in-law comes over to visit. She's always so respectful. She asked politely if she could come by regularly, and made it clear she didn't want to take the baby for sleepovers or anything like that. I feel heard and respected by her, which is a huge relief. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't break down sometimes. I miss my mom a lot. Not the woman she became, but the mom I used to have or thought I had. The one who didn't tell me I'd be a terrible mother or call me hateful. My therapist reminds me it's a marathon, not a sprint, and tells me to focus on the good things. Speaking of good things, Bates was officially terminated. Not only that, but his reputation in the industry wasn't just damaged, it was completely obliterated. His brother's reputation also took a hit, but because my brother-in-law isn't in an industry that cares as much about personal reputation, he still has his job, as far as I know. Bates actually had the nerve to send me a 12-page, double-sided, single-spaced letter. In it, he rambled about how hurt he was that I'm denying him what's his, and how my husband was so threatened by him that he had to destroy him professionally, because he couldn't destroy anything else. I say seemed because I didn't bother reading it. My lawyer did and gave me the gist. I've also heard through the grapevine, no, I don't ask, people just tell me, that Bates is still stalking me. Apparently, the mother of his children moved away, and he didn't care at all. He even said it was for the best. This man doesn't even care about his own kids, but somehow wants to play house with me and my baby. It's ridiculous. Unfortunately, he won't be hitting rock bottom anytime soon because his mom already let him move back in with her, so I doubt he's going to learn anything from all of this. It's not the flashiest of updates, but that's the latest on the situation. Oh, and my husband decided to either burn or donate every single item my mom or my parents had given him, all with my dad's blessing. He said life's too short to give her any space in his life, even in the form of memories. Comments. Commenter. I'm really glad you're getting through all of this with the best parts of your family intact. I don't quite understand the firing part, though. I get that Bates is a bad dude, but how does that connect to his work? OP. Without giving too much away about his industry, it's a very tight-knit community. When someone gets a bad reputation, they get blacklisted. Before all this, he had this feminist single dad image that helped him at work. He even told some of his co-workers that I'd been with him for much longer than we actually were. Commenter. I'm reading your story at 1:30 a.m. from my home in India, and I just want to say I have so much respect for you. I'm sorry for what you've gone through, and I hope your child grows up happy and healthy. I also hope this whole mess ends soon, and you can be reunited with your mother once her fantasy about your ex is over. Stay strong. OP. That's such a kind sentiment, but I'm afraid I'll never talk to my mom again. I miss her so much, and I cry a lot over it, but she's not the person I thought she was. My baby deserves the best family possible, and I've come to terms with the fact that she just isn't part of that anymore. My mom is no longer part of our lives, and as heartbreaking as that is, I know I have to protect my baby. New update, June 30th, 2024. Long time no see. I've got some updates for those who've been following along. First, I just want to thank everyone for the constant support. Whenever I log into this account, I'm met with mostly positive messages and comments, and I can't express how much I appreciate it. I'm not sure if anyone will even read this, but for those who do, I've got mostly good news. So, let's dive in. My parents are officially divorced now. After a long stretch of fights and tantrums from my mom, it's finally over. She kept the house and got a bulk payment, but that's it. My dad? He's like a brand new man, and we're all so happy for him. A little throwback to when all the drama first went down. Despite everything, we didn't fire our cleaning lady. She's been with my husband's family for decades, and I was super stressed about her potentially losing her job because of my crazy family's antics. We're not slobs, but we definitely rely on her help. My dad talked to her and told her she was on paid vacation while we sorted things out, and that we absolutely didn't want her to leave. She was so grateful, and her family was too. In fact, my dad became pretty close with them during that time. Now here's the kicker. Her sister owns a nail salon, and my dad is dating her. She's a lovely woman with grown children, so she totally gets the family dynamics we've got going on. My dad's been very clear that he's not planning on getting married again or moving in with anyone, and she's totally fine with that because she enjoys her independence. When my mom heard about their relationship, she nearly had a stroke. She's been going around saying my dad is going through a late midlife crisis and had to resort to being a sugar daddy. I obviously didn't hear this firsthand, since I have no contact with her, but that's what I've been told. Last I heard, she's having a hard time. She was never good at managing money, and now that my dad's not around to bankroll her, she's had to put a stop to her ridiculous spending habits. My sister isn't doing any better. She's struggling too, since my dad has stopped helping her financially. He was willing to keep supporting her for my nephew's sake, but things got really rough. My nephew, her son, started calling my baby an affair baby and saying she wasn't with her real dad. He even called my other nephews delusional for thinking they were cousins. It all came to a head at a birthday party when he pushed one of my nephews, on my husband's side, and said that he was the only real cousin. The kids were so confused and upset but immediately told an adult. My dad had a serious talk with my nephew about it, but he just kept repeating the same nonsense. So, my dad went to my sister to get her to step in, but she shrugged it off and said she couldn't stop a child from telling the truth. That was the final straw. She gave my dad the old "don't all kids tell the truth" excuse, but he wasn't having it. He told her that until things changed, he was cutting them off. My sister panicked and cried, but she's also incredibly stubborn. So now, my nephew is going to public school because my dad stopped helping them financially, and she's trying to blame my husband for it, saying he made my dad cut her off. As for Bates, he's still unemployed. I know I've been a bit cryptic about why he got fired, but here's the deal. He worked in an industry that deals with vulnerable women, and some of his work was related to stalking. The irony, right? That's why his organization didn't want anything to do with him once the truth came out. They didn't want the scandal to touch them. Since then, I've received 2 more rambling, handwritten letters from him. And since he only has my lawyer's address, guess who gets to read and file those lovely letters? Yep, my lawyer. He's a real champ about it. Other than those letters and the occasional bit of gossip, I haven't had many issues with Bates. There was one incident, though. I was at the grocery store when a random woman came up to me and asked if my child was Bates' baby. I was speechless. I asked her what she was talking about, and she said he had a photo of us on his profile and that I should be ashamed of myself for hurting such a good man. Turns out, he's still spreading the narrative that my baby is his and that I loved him so much. But the thing that really shocked me? The photo she mentioned was one that had never been public. It had only been shared in a family group once, and that was it. I told my husband immediately, and while he was furious, he kept calm. We decided to figure out who the rat was, and long story short, we discovered it was my dad's 2 sisters who had been feeding information to my mom. My dad was crushed. He didn't hesitate to cut them off, though, and now they're begging him to talk to them again. On a brighter note, my brother and his family are doing great. We've been seeing them a lot and have even gone on some family holidays together since my last update. They've also gone no contact with my mom and sister. My sister-in-law is actually thrilled about it, which surprised me at first. Turns out, she was never a fan of our mom but had been keeping the peace for years. My in-laws continue to be wonderful. We've now started allowing my mother-in-law to babysit overnight, and she's over the moon. Sometimes, she'll have all her grandchildren under one roof, and they just adore her. She used to be a flight attendant, so their favorite game is pretending they're on an airplane. She's amazing with the kids, and we completely trust her, so we never worry when she's watching them. We did have to make her social media accounts private, though, because my mom was stalking her online. I'm sure my mom is extremely jealous, but, honestly, she made her own bed. Lastly, my husband is my rock. He keeps me grounded whenever little things come up. We've even started talking about whether we want to have another baby or maybe adopt. We haven't decided yet, but we're lucky to have the support system and the privilege to even consider it. I still miss my mom a lot, though. Sometimes, I cry when I think about her. I've come to realize there are milestones in my life that I'll never be able to share with my mom again, and that's hard. But at the end of the day, she's not the person I thought she was. As much as I miss her, the safety and well-being of my family matter so much more. On a lighter note, here's a fun fact. This past Father's Day, they actually went real camping. It went great, aside from a few mosquito bites and some poorly placed sunburns. But overall, they had a blast, and it was a perfect way to celebrate my dad.